everybody, and welcome to today's video. I am incredibly excited that I can start to talk about the remaster of NieR today because, and I say this with absolutely no exaggeration whatsoever, NieR is actually my favorite game of all time. Yes, even more so than the Miku games, and even more than Persona 4 or Danganronpa. It might not have the waifu quality of those other games, but it is a masterpiece on every single level. Even NieR Automata, which I think on balance is a better made game, comes second to NieR itself, and that's because it came second. It built on the brilliance of NieR, but NieR is really the genesis of it all. NieR had a powerful, almost overwhelming impact on me when I first played it back on the PlayStation 3, and I am thrilled that I can now let you all know that at this previous stage of the game, it is every bit as incredible as I remember it to be. Now, I can't talk too much about specifics of this remake in this preview. NieR is actually very hard to find. You can't even download it off the PlayStation Store. It's one of those rare games that is available on disc only if you have a working PlayStation 3 still. And so a lot of people have missed out on playing it over these years. So Square Enix, being quite aware of spoilers and the like, have put some pretty substantial limitations on what we can talk about with this game at this preview stage. And on top of that, they've given us footage to use. We haven't been able to use our own footage. So what you're seeing on the screen in front of you came from Square Enix. Rather than try and talk about the game with such limitations, what I'm going to do instead is qualify why I think NieR as a thing is such a superior experience. And I'm also going to share with you the supplied footage of the remake alongside some original footage that I did capture from the PlayStation 3 game. So as a preview, you'll be able to see that there is a significant update in quality across the kind of the aesthetics and the visual presentation of the game. But mostly I am going to talk about why I love NieR as a concept so much. NieR Automata, the sequel, is quite famous for being quite dense in terms of its philosophical musings. It went hard on themes like existentialism and nihilism, and then underpinned that with this great deep commentary about religion, both in terms of organized churches and the concept of God itself. NieR Automata was a lot to work through, a lot. Without giving anything away, NieR is both much more simple than NieR Automata in the sense that it is razor focused on one particular theme, and yet it is also so much more complex than NieR Automata because of what it is focused on. Again, I'm not giving away any plot points here, but NieR's principal concern is that of personal identity, and it calls right back to the grandfather of modern philosophy, Descartes, with this whole "I think, therefore I am" line. Of course, for 5 words, "I think, therefore I am," that sentiment is a ridiculously complex one to try and unpack, and NieR fully respects the player's intelligence to go along with the discussion. Each of the main protagonists in NieR is some manifestation of this idea of existence in body and consciousness, and the genius behind the game's narrative, Yoko Taro, deconstructs this idea in ways that you cannot even fathom without repeat plays of NieR. It is going to take you a long time to come to the essential argument, thesis, and core point of NieR. Now, while the focus is on that particular theme of identity and consciousness, NieR, much like its sequel, also has a very strong sense of spirituality to it. And most significantly, the game seems to be Yoko Taro's musings on Taoism and Taoist concepts and philosophies. This is a big contrast to Automata, which is very heavily influenced by Western religion, specifically the 3 religions that worship God, them being Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. NieR's more Eastern approach to spiritual thought gives it a very different tone and atmosphere, and it is one that I have found to be fascinating all over again on this replay, because as you can probably guess, Yoko Taro doesn't exactly provide a simple view on these things. It really does encourage you to delve deep into it, and as somebody that doesn't know as much about Taoism as I probably should, this game has been a good way for me to engage with some of its concepts and thoughts. Thirdly, NieR represents a philosophical musing on game design itself. It's quite meta in that way. Overall, it is an action JRPG, but, and again without giving away any specifics at this stage in preview, NieR flits in and out of dozens of different genres for what are effectively mini-games, but the transitions into and out of them are completely seamless. If you've played NieR Automata, then you probably will remember that there was this giant shmup section that got added into the game and it came out of nowhere, you'd be wandering around in third-person action JRPG form one moment, but then you fought an entire boss battle as though it was a top-down 2D shmup. NieR Automata was relatively restrained about its flirtations with other genres in comparison to NieR, so that experience that you had with that shmup section, you will expect to see a lot more and a lot greater variety in that kind of thing within NieR itself. And I think that was part of the reason that this game was so widely panned when it was first released. It was too experimental, too unfocused, and too unrefined for a lot of people. However, I saw it differently. Just as the narrative was amusing and what defines us as people, NieR is aggressively looking into itself to understand the identity of a game. What are mechanics? What do they mean to the whole? How can mechanics be used to reinforce a certain narrative angle or atmosphere? Why do certain genres need to behave in a certain way? NieR may have been written up as being rough around the edges on its initial release, but what others saw as rough, I instead saw as a game that was brave enough not to take anything for granted, including the way that it played. NieR is a search for the truth, right down to its moment-to-moment gameplay, and I just love it for that. Incidentally as well, just as a quick side note, it does seem to play much more cleanly now with this remake. I haven't played the PlayStation 3 original for quite some time, so I can't compare the moment-to-moment gameplay, one for one, back to back. But from my memories of playing that PlayStation 3 original versus what I'm experiencing now on the PlayStation 4 game, it does seem to be a much cleaner game this time around. Like they've really worked to refine the basic mechanics and make it a lot more playable for people. Now, with all of that said, of course, if NieR wasn't enjoyable to play, all of the philosophy and thought would be for naught, and of course, it is a hugely entertaining game. It will make you laugh even as it asks you to think. The chemistry between the characters and the banter that produces is particularly good at keeping the mood light at just the right moments. It can get very dark, this game, very, very, very dark, but they do use that banter in a very effective way to make sure that there are moments of levity, and it gives you a chance to really connect with the characters on a different level. The game is also backed up with the most spectacular soundtrack in video games, bar none. It too is often quite experimental, and it frequently shifts genres itself, but there's an overall ethereal quality to it that makes it very listenable, and it's one of those few game soundtracks that I listen to a lot outside of the context of the game as well. It's actually one of my favourite soundtracks for working towards because it puts me in a fairly meditative state. And finally, I was deeply concerned that any effort to remaster NieR was going to hurt its visual aesthetic. This is a game that needs a very specific aesthetic. It needs to look washed out and otherworldly-like in order to work to support the narrative themes. And that was, of course, one of the areas that the game was also criticized for on release. A lot of critics out there didn't get the relationship between the visual aesthetic and the messages that NieR was trying to convey. I'm happy to say that, as you've seen from this video, the developers have spruced the game's aesthetics up in a very effective way without losing the thematic quality of them or the relationship to the narrative. It's a little like the impressive restraint that the developers of the Demon's Souls remake showed on PlayStation 5. They could have done a lot more to modernize and make these games look like other popular games out there, but the developers have really understood why a game needs to look the way it does sometimes, and they've simply modernized that aesthetic rather than trying to replace it with something that will be more popular. I do think that there will be some criticism still leveled at this game for its aesthetic because it will look a little bit washed out to some people and they will interpret that to mean something simple. But really, I think this is a gorgeous game, and I think it is just beautifully rendered for a very specific look that it is looking for. Now look, I really want to talk about this game an awful lot more, but it's going to need to wait for the review where I'm a bit more freed in terms of what I can talk about. But you can expect that as soon as review embargo lifts, I will have a massive review for this thing, along with probably more videos and other features looking at various themes and stuff. There is a lot to talk about in NieR, and I really want to take this opportunity to go deep with it, because I haven't really done much with NieR in terms of coverage on digitallydownloaded.net. NieR came out before the website was really taking off, and while I do have a short video on this YouTube channel, it was done quite cheaply and poorly back when I was still experimenting with the channel, so I was learning a lot, and it's just not a very good video either. I have a lot that I need to say about this game, and this will be a big opportunity for me to really delve into what is, again, my favorite game of all time. Unless the game starts to crash, or there's some surprise rewrite of the ending or whatever. I think we all know what kind of review and score I'm looking at with this one, because when I talk about games as artworks, and why that matters to me personally, NieR is the game that looms absolutely tallest as what I think that video games should be. This is the perfect realization of what I think games as art is, and I think that is just, it's just an amazing thing, and this game is really very much about everything I care about in video games. So I'm going to have a lot more to say about it, as I said, and you can look forward to that in about a month when embargo lifts on the review. So thank you as always for tuning in and watching this. I hope this video was interesting. I can't wait to talk more about NieR with you all, but please do sound out your own thoughts about NieR if you've played it before in the comments. Let's have a spoiler-free chat about why we love this game and why we're looking forward to the remake. If you do like my videos, please do mash that like and subscribe button. Like it because it feels nice to know that people like my videos. The subscribe button's there so you can make sure that you get each video as I put them up, and I do a lot of them, so you won't miss one if you are a subscriber. Also, if you want to support what we do at digitallydownloaded.net, please do consider backing me on Patreon. You can do so for even $1 a month or more if you want to support me for more, but doing that will allow me to continue to grow what we're doing with this website, channel, YouTube channel, website, podcast, everything else that we do. Finally, we launched a goods shop, a merchandise shop last week for various digitallydownloaded.net stuff. I'll put a link in the description below, but if you do want a coffee mug and you want to support DDNet that way, then they're pretty good, I like to think. I think they're pretty neat, so yeah, if you want to buy some merch, you can do that too. Thanks as always for watching. We will see you at the next video.